Hey everyone, I'm Karsten.
And I'm Brian.
And today we are taking a look at the Generals of M15. These legendary creatures all open up new possibilities for the format and give us a sense of nostalgia for sets in the past.
And the first creature we're going to take a look at is Avacyn, Guardian Angel. Obviously, she's way less powerful than her first version, but just because you're not as powerful as one of the most obnoxious creatures in the format doesn't mean you're bad. She's got Vigilance, and she only costs 5 mana. The one thing about her is that I think she'd be better in a deck that could make a lot of mana, so probably a green deck, so I like her better as a support card than a commander, but we can do some archetypes with her.
Avacyn, the Guardian Angel herself, really opens up to a nice little white angel tribal deck.
Because the problem with a lot of the other possible commanders for mono-white angel tribal is they're very expensive mana-wise, or they're just obnoxious, or both. No one's really gonna kill you because you're playing Avacyn, so she's gonna let you play angels without getting targeted.
And her abilities also lend herself to a very strong mono-white control deck. Control decks really don't want to be taking on a lot of damage. She's great at keeping your deck from getting killed, and she's also a pretty good win con as being a 5/4 flying vigilance creature. Next we have the blue legendary creature in the set, Jalira, Master Polymorphist. She reminds me a lot of one of my favorite standard decks that I played back in the day, and that was Mass Polymorph. Just having Polymorph on a legendary creature on my general is just really cool.
Which means you've got to do it polymorph style, where the only creatures you run are the creatures you want to hit off of her. And it's kind of nice that you can't hit legendary creatures, so people can't just use her to cheat Eldrazi into play off of their Eldrazi spawn. If you really want to harken back to the old polymorph decks, you want to play token generators that aren't creatures. That way all your creatures are just awesome. And then if you need utility that you don't want to hit, you can play legendary creatures.
So you just run some tokens, sack them, get some Eldrazi's. Once again, you can't get the legendary Eldrazi's, but you can still get some of the scarier Eldrazi's that exist. Eldrazi's are still scary, even if they're not named Ulamog and Kozilek.
The other good thing about this deck is that you're playing blue, so you work well with artifacts, and a lot of the token generation you're probably going to be using are artifacts.
And makes Tezzeret and Fabricate both very, very good. And of course, things are becoming into play. Enter the Battlefield shenanigans just seem hilarious and fun with General.
Well, and also you get dies triggers too, because you sack the creature, you can abuse enter the battlefield effects, and you can abuse effects that happen when they leave the battlefield. Honestly, if you played this deck, your MVP card would be Nim Deathmantle. Next, we have probably one of the most powerful creatures in the entire set altogether, I'd say, for Commander, Ob Nixilis Unshackled. He's only 6 mana. That's really good, and everyone knows that black can make way more than 6 mana just fine. He's a 4/4 flying trample. Normally with trample, you want more than a 4/4, but he's gonna get bigger, because whenever another creature dies, it doesn't care who controls it, he gets a +1/+1 counter.
But it's the other ability that everyone is talking about the most.
Yeah. It does kind of annoy me that he's good anti-tutor tech in the color that gets the best tutors. It's one of those hypocritical kind of things. I almost wish we could have gotten another red card that did this, but the thing I do like about him is he's really good against ramp decks too. And being guilty of playing some obnoxious ramp decks myself, this guy will let you hate out ramp decks without going into LD. So if you don't like LD but you're tired of losing to ramp, Ob Nixilis really helps with that.
And his best home just seems to be mono-black control. There are a lot of really great mono-black generals, but this guy looked at other mono-black generals and says, well, you're less effective now because I'm going to make you lose 10 life every time you tutor something. But he has some other things he can do too.
Obviously, this guy's also a good Voltron commander. Any creature that flies and gets bigger and costs, I'd say, less than 7 mana is a completely reasonable Voltron commander. And you want to protect him anyway. No matter what version of the deck you're playing, you're going to at least need Darksteel Plate, Lightning Greaves, Swiftfoot Boots. So why not just stick Sword of Protection and Value or 2 in there and just get there with him?
And then, of course, any general that has the words opponent takes 10 damage or opponent loses 10 life or something like that.
And sacrifices a creature.
Yeah, anything like that really lends itself to a pressure deck. This guy just crushes other people for trying to find a solution to him because he's like, oh, you're going to tutor for a removal spell? Well, guess what? You're going to take 10 life for that. Oh, you need a mass removal spell? 10 life.
Black can hate on your hand, it can hate on your creatures, it can hate on your lands even, so this deck, more than a lot of other pressure decks, can be tailored to fit your playgroup.
Next we have, surprise, surprise, one of my favorite generals in the whole set, Kurkesh Onake Ancient. And this guy is just like, here, you want Rings of Bright Hearth all the time? Well, here you go. Here it is for your artifacts. Which is awesome because red is actually really good with artifacts. So, I think it's pretty obvious. You play some artifact fun times with this guy. Just play artifacts, and maybe you'll play some Kurkesh and get some extra mileage out of them.
Yeah, because this deck doesn't really care if it has Kurkesh. Because some people don't like devoting all of their resources to keeping their commander around. So you're just going artifact beats, run out some robots, run out some Hellkite Igniter, get all your mana doublers going. Really, before now, if you wanted to play mono-red artifacts, Bosch was kind of your guy. This guy gives mono-red artifacts another really good option because they didn't have a lot before.
And of course, you can just make a hashtag value deck, so you're not trying to go infinite or anything, but you're just like, I'm going to use Kurkesh to get as much value out of my artifacts as possible.
Yeah, because it really is a one-way ticket to Value Town if you look at some of the cards you can play, like Planar Portal or Ring of Three Wishes. You can tutor for two things.
And Brianna and I do love our value, let me tell you. And then, of course, I think the one deck that's going to be the most seen at the tables is going to be a Kurkesh combo deck. I think that's the direction a lot of people want to go with him because he is just combolicious. It just, when you see an ability that copies abilities, you're like, huh, how can I abuse this and make infinite combos?
The thing you have to remember is, unlike having an actual Rings of Bright Hearth with Basalt Monolith, for instance, that's normally one of the most popular combos, Kurkesh requires red mana. You're going to have to find a way to filter that red mana. So he's not automatically infinite with Basalt Monolith. Although, there are some really fun times to be had with Magistrate's Scepter, because you can copy the ability that lets you put counters on it. So you can take a lot of extra turns very quickly in that, and that also helps you assemble combos a lot more easily. Next, we have Yisan the Wanderer Bard. I really like him because a lot of green commanders, let's face it, they're kind of obnoxious, they're kind of really straightforward, but Yisan, you really have to think about it because you have a lot of options, and because of the amazing flavor that they've built in with putting verse counters on him, and he's a bard, you can actually play a musical theme deck, and it's a lot easier than you'd think. There are a lot of good cards that work in it. Like, you know, you have your Seedborn Muse, you can play Court of Calling.
At the end of the day, it's still going to be a kind of a creature beatdown deck, but you're going to be doing it all with this kind of musical theme.
You can do a lot of searches for mentions of music in flavor text. You have to play some cards that have flavor text from the Love Song of Night and Day. That is a requirement in this deck.
So, and then of course, Proliferate seems like a really great way to abuse him. I mean, you're going to be putting counters on him. Why not get some +1/+1 counters at the same time? Because
then you can be putting counters on him, so you can play other cards that are good with counters, even if it's something as simple as Everflowing Chalice. And then, like he said, just get some +1/+1 counters in the mix. That's a lot of beatdown. That's a very Johnny deck.
And like we had mentioned with Kurkesh, we do love our value. And what Yisan allows you to do is kind of curve out and get the best value for your mana.
And unlike Jalira, he doesn't require you to sacrifice a creature. Holy crap, because if you had to sacrifice a creature, he'd be awesome. But this is just like more dudes, more dudes, more dudes.
Yeah, so in this deck, you kind of curve out, and so every activation of Yisan, you're getting awesome utility that fits that converted mana cost. So ramp, maybe an artifact destruction creature, like the newly minted Reclamation Sage.
This is mono green gets card advantage. All of a sudden, you make up for your lack of draw power with the fact that you can just tutor for whatever you need. But this is a deck that requires really careful building.
And then, finally, the big man himself, Sliver Hivelord. And I don't think there's much to say about Sliver Hivelord except, you know,
indestructible slivers. Ugh. So, I think that Sliver Legion is still my favorite for aggro. We actually have a Sliver Legion deck tech, so you guys should check that out if you need some ideas for Sliver Hivelord, because I think your choice for beatdown is pretty much between those two.
Sliver Hivelord makes your slivers just impervious to removal, which is Sliver's greatest weakness.
Especially if you combine it with Crystalline Sliver. Crystalline Sliver plus Sliver Hivelord equals, I don't know, I hope you've got a Final Judgment or a Hallowed Burial, because that's the only way they're going anywhere.
Yeah, and that, I think, might put Sliver Hivelord above Sliver Legion. Maybe second best Sliver, maybe just right under Sliver Overlord.
So I think it's going to be Sliver Legion if you want explosive potential. You just want to come out of the gates and just blow people out. but it's going to be Sliver Hive Lord if you have to build for the long game. So that's our take on the potential commanders of M15. They might not have been the most exciting or some of the most powerful ones we've seen, but they really do invite some deck building, and there is a lot of flavor built into these guys.
Overall, I mean, these are all hits. I like all the generals from M15. Let us know in the comment section below what kind of decks you guys are planning on building with these commanders. And until then, I'm Karsten.
And I'm Brianne.
And thanks for watching.